Well, good afternoon or evening as you reach this on Sunday, July 6th, 2025. I'm Mike Peacock, co host with Dr. Marty Durden here on the Step Up Make a Difference podcast. And Marty, welcome to a holiday weekend edition of Step Up the podcast. How you been doing, man?
Oh, doing great. I was so impressed by all of the patriotism that we've seen in the last weekend. Makes you proud to be an American. I was uh, out last night, and we in our community up here in Cartersville, we have a fireworks show. Man, it's just amazing how happy people are and how proud we are to just be Americans. It's just very refreshing to see that.
Yeah, my wife and I went out in the front yard on Friday night and watched all of our neighbors that went and spent a lot of money on fireworks. We had a pretty good fireworks show right here in my neighborhood. Pretty good. And today, without going any further, I've got to mention this. Today, Marty, is the 28th anniversary of the day that I became a father. My oldest son, Brooks, turns 28 today. And this is a special day in our house because he was our firstborn. And, but the kid that made me a father is 28 years old today. He's got a lovely wife and living in Birmingham now and just crushing life at the moment. And proud of him and proud of them. But had to mention that real quick before we went any further. Happy birthday, Brooks. And I think they've been doing a little traveling this weekend. And, but yeah, it's been a great Independence Day weekend, and we got a little special edition today of Step Up the Podcast. We got two guys. We got one guy you hear us mention quite a bit that is sort of our behind-the-scenes guy producing, but is also an outstanding broadcaster in his own right with us at Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And a little bit later on, we're going to have an even more special guest. We're going to have the founder, the CEO, the head honcho, the man what be in charge of Georgia Alabama Sports Live join us. Thrift Barringer is going to come on here with us for a while here in a bit. But first, let's bring on our man, Richard Holdridge. Richard, welcome to Step Up the Podcast.
Thank you, guys, for having me as a guest. This is exciting.
We're glad to have you, man. Most of the time, people hear us talk about you, but they haven't been able maybe to put a face with a name if they're not a regular on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And Richard has been with Thrift since pretty much the beginning, right, Richard?
All the way from the beginning when he was live streaming games on his phone. Back when it wasn't even called Georgia Alabama Sports Live, we were live streaming games on his Facebook page. That was back in 2022. So we're approaching 3 years.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And I tell you, it has grown and blossomed into a tremendous service. I'm gonna call it a service because I think that's what it really at the root of it is. And, this podcast is about servant leadership and about service to other people. And I think the vision that Thrift had when he started this, when he, like you say, Richard, was doing things on his phone, I think the vision he had, for Georgia Alabama Sports Live was to serve the community and to get publicity and exposure out there for high school and college sports in the Chattahoochee Valley area.
And I think that filled a need, a void that was missing. We used to wake up every Saturday morning, get the newspaper, look at all the scores, right, back in the day, and just see how everybody was doing. And I always spent Saturday mornings before film time just looking around at my colleagues. And then that disappeared, in all medium-sized cities. It's gone. It's a thing of the past. So when Thrift stepped up, that's a distinction that Georgia Alabama sports has, because this does not exist in most towns. So I applaud what you guys doing. It's an honor to be included in that. It's tremendous. I just can't say enough about what it's doing for athletes in this part of the country.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I know that it was a lot of work, not only to get all the schools on board, to be able to live stream the games, but to also get the sponsors, because we need them for the helping out with the equipment, for the time, and for the effort. And this coverage, it was here in the city, but it wasn't the coverage that we're providing, because we're live streaming hundreds of games, not just football games, but we're talking basketball, baseball, volleyball, softball. I even did an archery contest at Calvary Christian. I know that the community appreciates us, and we love doing it. My love for broadcasting started back in college. I know that, when Thrift comes on, he could talk about like how he started his broadcasting at CSU, and, it really was a perfect marriage. I know that we talk about like my passion for broadcasting and his work on Sports Visions 92.1. And it wasn't an accident that we met 3 years ago at a basketball practice at Campus Academy. My daughter happened to be cheerleading for the Campus Academy, and I just wanted to sit in just to watch her do cheerleading practice. And, Thrift and I met by accident because, I was an announcer for the Columbus Rapids at the time, and unfortunately the Rapids don't exist anymore, but, that kind of got my foot in the door. It got me to network. It got me some credibility as a broadcaster, and the rest is history. And speaking of Thrift, there he is.
The legend.
There he is.
Weird.
The man, the myth, the legend. And let's see, here we go. Hey, there he is, Thrift Barringer. Welcome to the show, Thrift.
Appreciate it, Mike.
If your ears have been burning, we've been spending the last few minutes talking about you here, but we're just Marty and I both have already expressed how appreciative we are to be able to be a part of Georgia Alabama Sports Live. When we're appreciative of you to allow us to get this show on the platform and get it going. And we've had a blast doing it so far. And we thought on this Independence Day weekend, we thought it'd be a great idea to have you guys on and just talk in general about things around here. But, one thing I mentioned earlier in the open, and when we brought Richard on, when you started doing games on your phone, you had the heart of a servant. And this podcast is all about servant leadership and service to other people. And your idea was to bring exposure to high school and college athletics, and even sometimes league athletics, just different things around recreational activities that revolve around sports. And you wanted to do this as a service to people, and it has grown. Man, I don't know what kind of fertilizer you use, but man, this thing is growing, and it's keeping on growing. And it's just been amazing to watch, and it's amazing to be a part of it.
I appreciate that, Mike. Yeah. So as you made mention, I knew this is something that I wanted when I played. Would have loved to have someone call my game and go back and watch and have unlimited film that I can show my grandkids. That was one thought. The other thought was the fact that I needed it as a young broadcaster, wanted more experience. And how do I do that? How do I get experience when there's not many opportunities out there? I just decided to create my own opportunity. So I decided to go and do it off my phone. And you're right. Never in my wildest dreams did I think by year 3 we would be eclipsing 8 million views. Are you kidding me, guys? Like in 1 year, 8 million views, and y'all were a part of that. Everything that we drop is being watched and being respected. And again, that's how I know I'm doing something, that I had that higher calling. I know Coach Durden, you talk about it all the time, but that higher calling is, I think I found it. And I was trying to find that niche, not just for me, but maybe for this community too. And I was lucky, to be honest, very lucky, because there's many people. Richard, Mike, you've been in broadcasting, that's streaming before. There's a ton of people in this area that have streamed and been a part of broadcasting, but I don't think it's ever been done at this capability because of having a team surrounded by guys like y'all too. So I really do appreciate the kind words, Mike. And I thought, and I want to say this, when y'all came up with an idea for a show, I thought, especially in what we're trying to build here at Georgia Alabama Sports Live, it cannot be only me. We need experience, leadership. We also want faith-based shows. And I've said that from the very beginning. But I didn't want it to always be me. I can't be on every show. I need other personalities. So it kind of worked hand in hand. But to be honest, I don't think there's a more informative, better show that not just goes in the nuances of sports like y'all do with having people that coach, but also talk about life. I don't think we have a better show than what Step Up represents, and I hope that we have it for many years to come, gentlemen. So thank y'all so much for having me on.
Well, we couldn't have done this without your vision. And it's just the confluence of all of these things coming together. I see God's hand in that, honestly. And I feel a part of something bigger. And, just the name of the show, Mike and I we're laboring back. We came up with like 20 different names for the show.
We did.
And then one day,
We did.
the word like Step Up. Hey, that's perfect. I did. So we had some conversation. We talk all the time on the phone. And he said, why don't we name it Step Up? And I said, Mike, I was about little things like that make you know it's a confirmation that that's what we're doing is right. And we can't say enough about meeting Richard here, who's been such a servant, such an expertise in what he does with the right spirit. He knows everything there is to know. And I remember one night I couldn't even hook up. Oh, I don't know what it was, but you guys are just unbelievable. We can't tell you how much we appreciate this, and we feel like we're making a difference. And we hope we are. I hope God is using this. And I know we get all kinds of feedback from coaches everywhere. Would not be possible without you two guys sitting there.
I appreciate it. And I want to add one more thing, Mike. They're talking about the feedback. I tell Mike this all the time. I get so many people reaching out. The show with Tim Fanning is one that resonates. The guy that you just had on, Kelvin Red, that one resonates. I mean, you're talking about powerful guys that have done incredible things in their lives through the ministry of God and through the ministry of the church. I think that's awesome, man. So, yes, not just from y'all. I get it back personally, too. And like I said, this is a great show to kind of kick off the week. It's the first show of the week, Sunday night at 7 o'clock. And then we go, boom, hard dough straight ahead. So this is a great way to get the every week started.
We're honored to be in that slot, too, to get the week going. And it's humbling, when I remember the first show that we did. And I talked to you the next Monday morning, and I said, well, what do you think? How'd it go? And he said, dude, you've already had over 8,000 views. I was like, say what? Already? And people didn't even really know we were starting this. And all of a sudden, we've got 8,000 people that viewed at least part of the show. And it's just been really good since then. And if you mentioned, man, the conversation with Tim Fanning, I point back to that one, to a lot of people. If I tell people all the time, if you have not watched that, go watch that and listen to that conversation. And, it was just an outstanding conversation. And, he and I could have talked for 2 hours, at least, probably longer than that. And
Right.
We had to cut it off before it ran too long. But, it was just a great one. And then Kelvin Red and, last week, our guest from Proactive Coaching, that was a great one. And we've got so many more people in the pipeline, that names that people are going to recognize and names that people look up to. And it's just, this thing is a whole lot of fun. And, I've got another idea for another podcast too, that I want to do that's also faith-based and something that I want to get going. And I'm looking forward to finally pulling the trigger on that and getting that going as well. But this has just been, and like Marty said, God's hand's been all over this, and the timing has been good, and the way things have worked, it's not an accident, and it's just thank you for the wedge spot to wedge us in there and get us going, and hopefully we're going to open up more things.
Well, I have a question I want to ask. I want to ask you, Richard, and you, Thrift. Who in your life has influenced you?
more than listen, I have a ton, and I don't want to leave off anybody, but I got to start with one person in particular. My love for sports has come from Larry Bush, my granddad. Long time coach in this area. He says his favorite times ever, Mike, his most favorite time coaching was the 2 years he was under Marty Durden. He had just retired from Muskogee County School District, long time at high school coach, won 1 million games, championships. He said the most fun he ever had was being an assistant to Marty Durden, coaching on the football, because guess what? He didn't have to worry about being in charge. He gave his input. You use it, you don't. I get to go back home and be with my grandchild. But my love for sports, my knowledge, knowing about this area, wanting to be involved as much as I can, it came from my granddad. He is my hero. He's always been my hero. I said that my grandmother, she passed away almost a year ago, coming up in August. And at her funeral, I said, my love for cooking came from her, but my hero is my granddad. And he's always been my hero. So if I had to pick one name for what I love and how much I love sports, it's come from one man. His name is Larry Bush.
Hey, and I gotta amen you there. He influenced me in many, many ways. And I gotta tell a story about Larry Bush.
Let me hear it.
So we were doing a drill one day where we were trying to rebound missed free throws, right?
Right.
So Larry was shooting and missing, trying to miss. He was trying to miss. He couldn't miss. He kept going through it, and I thought, Larry, do you think you can miss one? Can you just throw it up there, throw it up left-handed or something? And he was making everyone, just kept on making. So the guys on the team named him the Burning Bush. And that's what they called him from then on, man. But I got a million stories about Larry Bush and how he influenced in a very quiet, strong way. He's like the Gary Cooper, the quiet hero. That's what he was on our team. He had outstanding influence on those guys. When I run into them, they still talk about him. So Larry Bush influenced me too. Wow. Interesting story. How about you, Richard? Who influenced you, man?
Well, obviously my dad, he played football in high school, and he introduced me to sports at a very young age. Took me to my first baseball game in 1989. I remember it was at Candlestick Park, the San Francisco Giants taking on the Cincinnati Reds. That was the year that the Giants and the A's played in the World Series, and I was there from the Loma Prieta earthquake that really shook the foundation, literally, of the San Francisco Bay Area. And I remember Al Michaels getting on the broadcast and said, "I believe we're having an earth," and then it shut off. And that had such an impact. And when that's where I got the love from sports from my dad. I got the love from broadcasting, just watching the games and seeing a Bob Costas paint the picture, tell the story. That 3-man broadcast team with Bob Costas, Bob Euchre, and Joe Morgan. I fell in love with broadcasting, just being around my dad and watching sports. And I can never understand why my dad was a Green Bay Packers fan, because we weren't from Wisconsin. We don't have ties to Wisconsin, but he just happened to like the Packers because, as a young adult, he was hurt. And everybody in my family was hurt that the Raiders moved from Oakland to Los Angeles. We hated the Raiders because of that. And I cheer for the 49ers because I wanted to be different. And because everybody in my family were either Raiders fans, Cowboys fans, Packers fans. So that's why I cheer for the 49ers. But my love for broadcasting came later in life when, I wrote for my high school newspaper in high school. And then in college, I met the sports director in one of my broadcasting classes that asked me if I liked sports and I wanted to do broadcasting, and, the rest was history. And then took a little bit of a break because obviously I was in the military, and I actually did broadcasting in the military too. So broadcasting never really left me. And then I always take it back to my dad and just spending time with him, either watching games or going to sporting events.
That's amazing. How about you, Mike Peacock?
Cool. I want to ask you guys a question. I'm going to lead into that, Marty. I'm going to ask you guys a question because I'm going to tell you, I'm going to share something from my early days of my life that maybe not a whole lot of people know. But growing up, my dad was a Baptist minister, And growing up, we moved around a little bit, but I fell in love with the game of baseball when I was a little kid. We had a kid that we had a guy in our church where we were living at the time over in Alabama, um, and, and Steve will probably never hear this, but his name is Steve Acklin, and he was from Childersburg, Alabama, and he was a tremendous baseball player. And our families were really close, and Steve was the guy that I looked up to. I mean, I was like 5, 6 years old, and Steve was in high school. He had a chance to play for the Cincinnati Reds, and one thing led to another, and it fell through. And I talked to him a few years ago when my mom passed away, and he came to the funeral home. I said, hey, do you believe you could have done something in Major League Baseball? He said, no doubt in my mind. He said it just wasn't in the cards, and it wasn't in God's will to do it. But he was the guy who really got me to love sports. And then my uncles and my cousins, I started playing baseball when I was a kid. I didn't play football until I got to middle school. I did play 1 year of little league football, and then got into basketball. I shot basketball all the time in the driveway, so I naturally began to love sports. But here's my question to you guys: did any of you growing up imitate the broadcasters that you heard on TV and radio, and just sit out with a radio or sit in front of the TV and call the game yourself? Maybe pretending to be one of those guys, Kurt Gowdy or Vin Scully, or some of those famous guys that were on TV all the time when I was growing up. Did any of you imitate them? Because I did, and that's where I learned, kind of to be a broadcaster, even when I wasn't broadcasting. I watched those people. I listened to those people. I listened to the phrases they used and all of that kind of stuff. And when I finally got the opportunity to actually get behind a mic, it didn't feel like it was foreign. It didn't feel like it was something I should be nervous about. It felt like something I'd been kind of doing all my life, and I finally had a chance to do it for real.
Yeah,
How about that,
Mike? I agree. And Mike, when I was 11 or 12, it's funny. I just went to eat with a guy that's a lawyer friend of mine named Austin Gibson. We reminisce about the days we would go like to Ezel's Catfish with our families after church, and we're doing baseball tonight. We're doing college game day. Each one of us are a different character, and we're going from show to show, acting like we're part of the broadcasting. I knew I wanted to broadcast when I was 9 or 10 years old. When I was 12, my aunt laughs about this all the time. I asked for the college football encyclopedia to memorize. What 12-year-old wants a encyclopedia? I wanted it because I want to memorize every national champion, every Heisman winner, which I still have that useless knowledge in my head today. But I knew at a young age that's what I want to do, was the broadcasting. And if you listen to me now, Britt Musburger always says, you are looking live. And what I like to do is we are streaming live. And I hope Brent never comes after me for taking his phrase. Another guy I liked was Dan Shulman. He does college basketball. He used to do Major League Baseball, the night games many years ago. I really liked him. But yes, Mike, I used to do all that. Turn the TV down, pretend I was a broadcaster. I said I was going to work for ESPN when I was a very young age. And now being able to do it and kind of pinch myself is pretty surreal. I do want to throw out another name that I looked up to when I was 15 or 16 and realized people locally could make it big, was DJ Jones, because in the morning on ESPN2, right before game day at 7 o'clock, DJ and Dell and Sports Vision would come on. And I remember watching that every Saturday morning before my favorite show, College Game Day, would come on. And I'm like, dang, they're from here. So you don't have to be big time in a big market. You can actually make a name here in Columbus, Georgia. And now, obviously, after working with DJ for the last 4 or 5 years and him being a major mentor of mine and learning about the business from him, I'm very thankful for that. But he was a guy at a young age I kind of looked up to and said, so you can be from Columbus and make it big time. So that's kind of my thought on that, Mike. I think that's a great point that you made.
Well,
yeah,
I feel
it's a lot of fun.
Oh, absolutely. But I do feel like growing up in California, I was not privileged to be around college football. Now that I've lived in Columbus for 10 years, I see the passion. I knew it was a wake-up call when I moved to Tennessee back in 1999. The Tennessee Volunteers just won the national championship. I was wondering, why weren't anybody at the time, they were called the Tennessee Oilers, why weren't anybody watching NFL? I mean, because I was used to seeing the 49ers, the Raiders, the Rams, the rivalries between the Niners and the Cowboys in the early 90s. Being from the San Francisco Bay Area, it's really a baseball town with the San Francisco Giants and the Oakland A's. I mean, I was privileged to see all that. Knew nothing about college football growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area until I went to school in Tennessee and saw how many people just loved the Tennessee Volunteers, that a Tennessee-Florida game or a Tennessee-Alabama game was as big as the Super Bowl. And then it was a wake-up call. And I realized how big college football was. And, of course, I've lived in Atlanta. I've lived in Memphis. I've lived in Columbus for 10 years now. And I started appreciating college football. But the announcers that I was idolizing were mainly baseball announcers because I played baseball. It was my first love. Listening to Giants games on KNBR 680 in San Francisco, hearing Hank Greenwald, hearing Lod Simmons, hearing John Miller. I mean, it really takes me back to my childhood days. And, of course, hearing Vin Scully do the World Series games in the 1980s for NBC was incredible. And that's what I attribute to. And, of course, loving football and basketball with Madden and Summerall and hearing Dick Enberg and for basketball, hearing Marv Albert every time the Bulls were in the finals, just hearing Marv Albert with Matt Gukas, Steve Snapper Jones, Bill Walton. It was there's so many announcers that I can't think of all of them. But living in Columbus for 10 years, I started appreciating the local announcers as well.
Yeah, it was cool when I went to work at Columbus State as the sports information guy. Where I lived in Alabama for a large part of my growing up, we had the Columbus TV stations. So I got to watch Dave Plata when he was a young guy. That's a little jab at Dave right there, a little bit. But I remember Dave Plata, and then fast forward all these years, and I come to Columbus as the sports information guy at Columbus State, and lo and behold, I meet Dave Plata, who's just a normal guy. He's just a guy who lives in the community here. And we got to be friends, and I got to be friends with other guys at Channel 3, Jack Rogers for a while, Brian Solito, who was Brian Sharp back then. You guys may remember that. And then DJ was on Channel 3 for a while. All those guys coming through, spent a lot of time in press boxes with them and on press row with them at ball games and got to know them. And it's just like, hey, these are just regular guys in the community, just like me. You don't have to be some big name that has a silver spoon, that had some kind of special upbringing to be in this business. You just have to love what you do. And basically the other part of that is, and you guys probably all three will agree with this, you have to be a storyteller, because that's your job as a broadcaster, is to be a storyteller. You're telling the story of what's going on and relaying that to the people who are watching and listening. And, you have to have that in you a little bit. And plus you have to not be timid to talk. And if you ask my wife, she likes to tell me I need to hush sometimes. I don't mind talking. It's never been one of my weaknesses. Sometimes I'll clam up a little bit when I'm in the presence of people that I think are, Richard, you mentioned it earlier, doing the fanboy thing a little bit. I get a little bit intimidated sometimes and don't know that I'm going to say the right thing, but never had a problem talking. So being able to do this has just really kind of come natural with me. And, I don't take it lightly that I believe this is a gift that I've been given. And it's, I think every broadcaster that you ever hear will tell you that it is a gift that they've been given to be able to do this. I heard Brandon Gaudin, the Braves announcer, just yesterday say, this is a privilege to be able to do this, and it's so much fun to be able to do this. It's not like a job, right. And that's exactly the way I feel about it. But yeah, it is so much fun to be involved in, and it's such an honor to be a part of something that is growing and growing and growing and getting bigger and doing more thrift than you've already said it, more than you ever envisioned it would.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And I will say the thought, I work my butt off, guys, and I'm a grinder. And y'all seen I got a really good work ethic. I was going to make sure it eventually happened. Did I think it was going to happen this fast? No chance in my wildest dreams. And now looking and having other schools that want to hop on board and now expanding to above us in LaGrange and maybe in Valley and Beauregard, and we continue going across the state. Who knows, the Southeast. I feel like we got something kind of special that people around the state are noticing. And you got to have a good team. For all those young people out there that keep coming up to me like this, I just started because I wanted to go out and broadcast games. I didn't have a plan, a formula. I didn't have someone backing me. It was just go out and do it. And then I found people like-minded, like Chris and Toygar, who were producers that had their own equipment. A guy in Richard that really wanted to go out and know that we're not going to make a lot of money in the beginning. We're going to be doing a lot of things for free, but we're building something special. And then finding experienced guys like yourself, Mike, that can bring knowledge and help grow the company and know what it takes to get to that high of a level when you've called state championship games for a top-notch TV station. So I think eventually we're going to get to that point to where we're maybe even statewide, but I'm okay locally right now just doing what we're doing. And I'm excited about this upcoming year. I want to say this on the show. I don't know if you said it, Mike. Mike's going to be have his own team, and he's going to be dominating this Friday night. Now, he doesn't have a specific place because those are always going to change, but I know you're excited about it. But, guys, I got to get out of here. I'm heading to an event. I want to say thank y'all so much for being a part of Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Mr. Marty, when you called my granddad after my grandmother died, I will always say this over and over and over again. It meant the world to me and my family. It meant the world to my granddad. So I appreciate that. Mike, you know how much I love you, and I can't wait for Step Up to continue to grow here on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. So thank y'all so much, guys.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Thrift. Right back at you, man. We are so appreciative of everything, and have a good time today. I know you're going to a local festival here, but
yes, sir.
Great time today, and knock it out of the park again, because I know you'll probably be streaming something from there.
You know it. There's not a time I'm at an event and it's not being streamed, baby. See y'all later, guys.
All right, see you. But Richard, back with you. It's Thrift's fantastic, and his vision for this thing. It's amazing when you plant a little seed. Sometimes you get a much bigger tree than you thought you were going to grow. But Richard, you mentioned growing up in California and moving out here to the Southeast, and the realization when you got here of how big sports are below the professional level. It's I guess growing up out here, it's always just kind of been common knowledge to me, but college sports have always taken bigger billing than professional sports around the Southeast, and mainly college football. But college sports in general, college basketball is huge. It's much more popular than the NBA in this part of the country.
Yes.
But it is, and you're right. I think in California, a lot of the fan bases are divided by their professional allegiances. I know, heck, look at the city of Chicago. You're either a Cubs fan or a White Sox fan, and you can't be both. It's kind of like Alabama and Auburn in the state of Alabama. You're for one or the other. You can't have mixed allegiance. But it's different around the country, and here in the South, we're unabashed in that feeling, I guess.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Being in Tennessee, I've lived in Tennessee for a little bit. I saw how the entire state were Tennessee Volunteers fans. There weren't really Vanderbilt fans unless you went to the school. As far as basketball, it was really a state divided with the Memphis Tigers, because I was in Memphis with the John Calipari, the Derrick Rose, the Chris Douglas Roberts years where they went to 3 straight Elite Eights and should have won the championship in 2008. But, Mario Chalmers just broke the hearts of all of us Memphis fans. And I'm still a Memphis Tigers fans because of the time that I lived in Memphis, and me and my college roommates would actually go to the FedEx Forum and see the Memphis Tigers, go travel on the road to see them play Alabama at Coleman Coliseum, or go to Tad Smith Coliseum over there in Oxford to see them play Ole Miss. I became a fan of the Memphis Tigers. And the Memphis Grizzlies, I'm sorry to say this, they took a back seat to the Memphis Tigers. That is a Memphis Tigers town. And same when you get to Nashville. Yeah, there are your Tennessee Titans fans, but the Tennessee Volunteers are overwhelmingly bigger fans. And if you go to Atlanta, there are way more Georgia fans than Falcons fans. And that's just the reality of it. I mean, you don't see people that live in Alabama that say, oh, I like the New Orleans Saints because I'm down in the southern part of Alabama. So that's my NFL team. People ask, oh, who's your NFL team? Oh, people in Alabama say either Titans or Falcons. No, it's either Alabama or Auburn. And I saw that when, in the beginning, when I first moved out here, that I had a friend who had a house divided. I was staying with a friend that was an Auburn fan, and half of the family was Alabama fans. And I actually watched my first Iron Bowl, like religiously, just watching it with these family members who, if they didn't like the outcome, they were sleeping in another room. They took it personal. It's either Alabama or Auburn. You can't like both. And there was a time, it's hard to believe, before Nick Saban got there, that Auburn won 6 straight Iron Bowls. I don't know if you guys remember when Tommy Tuberville, now a United States Senator, dominated Alabama during the Mike Shula years, during Dennis Franchione. I know that Alabama fans got to be beside themselves. There was a time before Nick Saban that Alabama finished 3-9, and I'm okay with bringing this up because I'm not an Alabama fan. Alabama fans have been spoiled with Nick Saban and now Kalen DeBoer, which I think Kalen DeBoer is a very decent coach that is going to get Alabama to the college football playoff. So Alabama fans have been spoiled, but yeah, there was a time where Tommy Tuberville, he was the man in Alabama, rattling off 6 straight Iron Bowls.
Yeah, and Richard, I come from one of those mixed families. The funny thing about my family is that in the whole lineage of my family, until my cousin's son, who is a little bit older, couple, 3-4 years older than my oldest son, Brooks, whose birthday is today. Until him, nobody in my entire family had ever been to the University of Alabama. Well, nobody had been to Auburn either, but we lived closer to Auburn. For whatever reason, my dad, a Baptist minister, was an Auburn fan. He was the only one in the entire family. That included me. Because growing up, everybody else pulled for Alabama and Bear Bryant and Alabama Crimson Tide, and I thought I was supposed to too, And when I started learning about Auburn and attending events at Auburn, and then I met my eventual wife, whose family were Auburn fans, and started spending even more time at Auburn, I started to fall in love with Auburn, not just the university, but the area and the town and the feel of the whole place. And now I'm 100%. I'm all in. I'm all in Auburn. It's just one of those things that it will grow on you, and it just goes into your veins, I guess. And but I was at the very first Iron Bowl that was played at Jordan-Hare Stadium, and I was still sitting on the fence when I went to that game. I'm not going to lie to you. My wife and I were engaged. She was a student at Auburn, and I sat in the student section at Auburn, kind of sitting on the fence. I even wore a Baltimore Orioles hat to the game so that I wouldn't have anything that indicated I might even remotely be an Alabama supporter, but I also didn't dress in Auburn colors either. And I was kind of neutral. And to see that atmosphere, Richard, man, I'd been to Auburn games before. Don't get me wrong. Growing up that close to Auburn, where I grew up, I had been to Auburn games before. But to be in that atmosphere at the first Iron Bowl, that might have been the single deciding factor that drew me to be a part of the Auburn family. That as well as my own family being an Auburn family. Now I've got a wife with 2 degrees from Auburn. I attended Auburn very briefly right after I graduated college. I had to go for a summer to finish my teaching certificate material. But then my son now has a degree from Auburn. My other son is attending Auburn this fall, and we've had tickets to Auburn games now for about, I don't know, 5, 6 years. And I've seen a couple of Iron Bowl wins. I've seen a lot of different things at Auburn, and I've just fallen in love with the place. But I still have a lot of respect for Alabama. I'm not a hater, and it seems that we could go on a whole show about this, about the sheer hate in college sports and in professional sports, for that matter, between fan bases and different groups of people. We won't get off on that tangent, but it's amazing to watch sometimes and hear the stories every year around the Iron Bowl when families get into arguments and somebody ends up getting hurt or even sometimes killed over an argument to do with the Iron Bowl. That's just amazing that it gets taken that far, but that just lets you know that it is serious business here in the Southeast, and these rivalries are huge. But and I can, and bringing it back around to what we've been talking about, kind of the theme of this as far as broadcasters. Alabama has had some great broadcasters. Auburn has had some great broadcasters. Georgia, Larry Munson did it. How many years, Marty, did Larry Munson do Georgia football or Georgia sports?
Oh, since Moby Dick was a minnow.
I'm telling you, he's had the most recognizable, probably the most recognizable voice in college sports for a long time because he was unique. And to listen to him do a game, even if you weren't a Georgia fan, if you were just listening to Georgia play somebody and you listened to Larry Munson, you found yourself on the edge of your seat listening to that game, and because he just painted a picture, and he was always one of those. He was very cautious not to assume that Georgia had something sewed up. He would always say, "There's just too much time on the clock," and he would, don't count your chickens, and all that kind of stuff, and he was just, it was fun to listen to, but he's one of those guys that I listen to along with the Jim Fife at Auburn, who tragically passed away. Gary Sanders before that at Auburn a long time ago. Gary Sanders was a sportscaster in Birmingham when I was a kid, and he did a lot of Auburn football. But you had Paul Kennedy at Alabama, but the man I remember most at Alabama was John Forney. John Forney was a guy when I was in, probably coming up through grade school all the way into high school, and John Forney was the voice of the Crimson Tide. And now they had Eli Gold, who Eli Gold is a consummate professional.
Yes.
You can put him doing a donkey basketball game at a high school somewhere for a fundraiser, and he would make it exciting and do a top-notch professional job. But it's the broadcasters we've had in the state of Alabama and in the state of Georgia have just been tremendous. And and I got to mention another guy here locally. And that's Scott Miller. Scott Miller has been doing Columbus State athletics. He started with Columbus College, of course, and became Columbus State in 1996, I believe. But Scott's been doing that since the 70s, I think. Started as a much younger guy when he had a whole lot more hair than he does now, and he's carried it through, and he is still going strong, and he is one of the best ever. To work with, to talk to be friends with, but he loves that program. And usually the good broadcasters for these colleges, these college programs, and sometimes even the professional programs, they love the program. They genuinely love the program. I remember Alabama brought in a couple of hired guns to fill the space for John Forney. When John Forney got too old and finally had to get out of broadcasting, they brought in a couple of hired guns, and you could tell they didn't have the love for Alabama that John Forney did. And thankfully, Auburn was able to step from Jim Fife right directly into Rod Bramlett, and Rod also tragically passed away in an accident. And then now they've got and I just drew a blank. I had his name, and now Andy Burcham. I'm sorry. And Andy, if you see this, you probably won't, but if you see this, I apologize for not being able to remember your name. But they've got Andy Burcham now, who also loves Auburn. And, Georgia, has broadcasters who love that program, and it is amazing. You feel the emotion in their voice when you're doing it,
Mhm.
and I hope that people, when we're doing these podcasts, with Marty and I, with Step Up, and Richard with all the broadcasts that you do, I hope they can feel the genuine emotion that we have for what we are doing and who we are representing when we're bringing these things out, because I think that makes a huge difference.
Well, it matters. It's making a difference. When people view this program, show an interest in it, you're making a contribution to thousands of athletes who pour their heart and soul into a sport. And it matters to them to be recognized for what they're doing. And for coaches who have taken up the mantle, answered the call to be coaches, it matters. So your support for this Georgia, for Alabama, Georgia Sports Live is, we can't overstate how important that is, because you're investing in people and you're investing in the most precious resource we have, and that is the young people in our country. And in that regard, I know we got to wrap it up here. I would like to finish up by saying one thing. If you're out there listening, and we would appreciate your support. Richard, these guys, they donate so much of their time freely. So we could use your help in being a sponsor for our program. We have some sponsors now, as you see there. We roll the credits at the beginning and the end. But if you're interested in becoming a sponsor for this program, Step Up, we could use your help. We need it, and we would really appreciate it. And it would make a difference if you stepped up and made some kind of contribution. We have different levels of sponsorship. So if you're interested, just simply go to Step Up Facebook page, send us an email, and we'll contact you. If you want to email me, I'm marty.durden21@gmail.com. marty.durden21@gmail.com. And we'll make a connection and connect you. And we would really appreciate your help, and it would make a difference. So step up and help us out. We'd appreciate that.
And I'll go ahead and throw in on behalf of Richard and Thrift here too that Georgia Alabama Sports Live is always looking for more sponsors to be able to bring more games. We're expanding, we're growing, we're reaching out to more communities. We have people that are wanting to join our network of schools that we are covering. We have other schools coming all the time and saying, we sure would like for you to come and do our games as well. And you want to be a part of this, something that's growing and it is blooming and it is getting bigger and bigger. Get in touch with the guys at Georgia Alabama Sports Live. All you have to do is Google Georgia Alabama Sports Live. You're going to get all the information you need on who to reach for that, and become a part of it. Join us. Join the team with us. We're all a big team and a big family, and we're trying to keep this thing rolling and cover as many athletes as we can and give people a chance to be exposed and seen and publicized like they should be. It's an endeavor of the heart, as you heard Thrift say, something he loves doing. And we just want to keep it rolling and keep it going. And we're proud here at Step Up. We're proud to be a part of such a great organization as Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And we're members of the family, and we want it to grow. And we're looking forward to what's to come down the line as we continue to get bigger and bigger and better and better. And speaking of that, Marty just mentioned his email address. I've been telling you guys, I think on 2 or 3 different episodes, I'm going to sit down one day and I'm going to create us unique email accounts so that we can start publicizing them here on the show and people can actually send us messages. We're also going to create some at least Facebook and Instagram pages where people can message us on there, and we can throw some content over there every now and then and make it a little bit unique going in. And, we want people to know, too, if you have an idea, it doesn't matter where you are in the country, if you have an idea of a coach, an athletic director, a former athlete, somebody who's involved in sports, a broadcaster, an administrator, doesn't matter. If you have somebody, you have an idea of who has been a servant and has served people, send us their name and get us some contact information, and we'll get them on this podcast because we want to talk to as many people from as many different areas and different walks and different avenues of sports as we can to keep getting our message out there that we're all here to serve. We're here to serve each other. We're here to serve kids. We're here to serve parents. We're here to serve the community as a whole. And that's what this whole podcast is about.
So help us. Step up and help us. We would really appreciate it. And yeah, you're making a difference in a lot of lives. I can't thank
Richard,
you guys enough.
Richard, jump back on here and make some announcements. What's some things that are coming up on Georgia Alabama Sports Live this week?
Well, like my broadcast partner, Thrift Barringer, mentioned, he had to step out because he's going to 706 Day, which is just a great event that's happening right now as we speak at Woodruff Park. It's going to be a slow day as far as live streaming events. We did our last live streaming event on Saturday. We're going to be interviewing as many athletic directors as possible for sitting down with an AD, sitting with an athletics director, state of the programs. And then before you know it, August, we're going to be live streaming softball, volleyball, high school football. It's going to get real. And I'm excited about being a part of Georgia Alabama Sports Live, going on our third year. I cannot wait. Mike, I can't wait to hear you up in the broadcast booth. I know we've called several games before, and it's been exciting just to be a part of Georgia Alabama Sports Live, and I appreciate all that you do. And Coach Durden, I know that I'm really blessed that I got to know you through this podcast, and wish all success with you as well. And I'm just glad that we're able to have a platform like this that's faith-based, and I know that it really means a lot to step up and make a difference in these kids' lives, or anybody that that we touch as far as our influence on the community and each other's lives as well.
Thank you so much, Richard.
Yeah. Hey, Richard, I want to just echo some things that Marty said and we've already said, but we cannot tell you how much we appreciate you helping us keep this podcast going, because you're the guy behind the scenes that gets us started, that does the little editing, sometimes a lot of editing that needs to be done, and gets us published every week. And I tell you, we are tremendously appreciative of that and your knowledge and expertise to be able to do that. And we can't thank you enough, really, for being there for us to do this. This has been something that Marty and I have been talking. We talked about this, Marty, for about 2 years before we finally were able to get it together and start. And finally, we just said, "To heck with it. We're just going to start it," and we'll cover the we'll go through the ditches and trip over the rocks and run into the trees as we go, and we'll learn from it and move on. And that's kind of what we're doing here as we go. And we're going to get better and better, and we're going to keep this thing rolling as long as we can. Richard, we appreciate it, and we so much appreciate Thrift for allowing us to be on this platform, to have this platform, and we want to grow it. We want to keep it going. We want to pick up more and more viewers, more and more followers, and we're going to talk about some ways maybe to do that as we go along, but we just appreciate it. But ladies and gentlemen, the whole gist of this is be willing to step up and make a difference in somebody's life, whether it's a group of people, whether it's at your church, whether it's in a civic club, whether it's in your local school for your kids, just in your community in general. Be willing to step up and make a difference in service to others, because that's what this is all about. And for Marty Durden, Richard Holdridge, and our great friend Thrift Barringer, we're going to say so long this week on the Step Up Podcast. We'll see you next week, same bat time, same bat channel, as they used to say at the end of Batman on TV. But we'll see you next week. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again.